Well, students, now I will be discussing with you a lecture on disaster management, and the precise topic of my lecture today will be towards a safe, disaster resilient places for all of us. Towards a safe, disaster resilient places for all of us. Now, for making our places resilient, disaster resilient, we need to make a plan, a comprehensive plan for, I can say that we should have a comprehensive document for disaster management planning, and that will cover the entire range of disaster management and resilient reduction activities, basically. Okay, the efficacy of a disaster management plan depends entirely on the extent to which various elements of the plan can be made operational, or they can be brought to the level of active implementation. Now, here we will be discussing some key elements that we need to be taken up urgently in order to implement a plan towards a safe, disaster resilient places for all of us. Number one will be emergency operation center. This is the prerequisite for the disaster management. Now, with adequate floor space and the facilities and amenities that have been indicated, the center will act as a center of the implementation of the disaster management plan. It will help to facilitate and monitor the process of implementation, and it will also provide us the ready information of the progress of the implementation. Implementation of what? Implementation of the disaster management plan. Okay. Now next will be implementing the disaster management plan. The disaster management plan, it requires financial, technical, and human resources to be deployed. Now, this disaster management plan, it requires adequate framework for disaster governance. What is that? It means that we should have adequate, unambiguous framework for disaster governance. Ambiguities, they may hamper these emergency responses, operational readiness, as well as the long-term planning. We need to strengthen the disaster management authority with standard governance in all the matters which are there. Now, similarly, we need to develop human resources. We call it the developing human resources and their capacities for implementation. No disaster management plan at any level will be of value if there is not adequate trained human resources to understand, implement, and when necessary, upgrade the disaster management plan. Okay, it thereby meaning that we should have educate trained human resource, so that because once they are trained, they will understand and they will implement the plans as and when required. We say this title we give to it is developing human resources and their capacities for the implementation. Now, another title, that awareness generation, that we need to make awareness among the masses. We need to build the capacity, and we need to make certain exercise, simulation exercises with all the stakeholders. Now, I believe that nothing is possible without the cooperation of various sections of different stakeholders. And in this matter, government should take the lead, especially in major or critical situations. That means at the forefront, government should take the lead, and then there are different stakeholders, and they will play a very important role in case of a major or critical situations arise. Now, I have made few of the objectives to build safe and disaster resilient society, or I can say the disaster resilient places for all of us. Number one objective is to protect the lives of the people from any kind of disaster. This is the first. Whenever we are saying that we have to put disaster management plans into action, or the main objective, the first objective of that plan is to protect the lives of the people from any kind of disaster. Number two, to minimize the sufferings of a vulnerable population and loss of property. Okay. Next is to achieve maximum efficiency in reducing the vulnerability of people to disasters. And it can be done, which we have just now discussed it, the disaster management plan. If the disaster management planning is foolproof, it is up to the mark, that by that way we can achieve maximum efficiency in reducing vulnerability of people to the disasters. Now, by way of these disaster management planning, we can promote a culture of disaster resilience. Okay. Next, now we need to design appropriate prevention and mitigation strategies across various levels of the stakeholders. Okay. And at the same time, we need to enhance the capacities of all relevant stakeholders in disaster risk reduction. Okay, it is known as, it can be called a DRR, disaster risk reduction. That means capacity building. Now, to mainstream this disaster risk reduction as an integral component of the development planning. Okay. So at the same time, we need to establish efficient disaster response, or we can say relief mechanisms. We need to establish these relief mechanisms. By way of establishing these relief mechanisms or disaster response, we can build safe and resilient disaster places. Now, one more point or objective I can call did they provide the clarity on rules and responsibilities for all stakeholders concerned with disaster response and recovery. Basically, whenever there is a disaster, different stakeholders they don't have clarity what to do. Basically, one group of people which have been meant for one kind of a job, they indulge themselves in different kind of the responsibility, with the result that entire system or entire recovery or entire response becomes hodgepodge and it delays. Basically, there there is no clarity on the roles and responsibilities of the stakeholders, with the result the response and recovery gets delayed. It gets delayed. Therefore, we should first of all we should have clarity regarding the responsibilities and the rules. One of the most important point is that we have to ensure coordination and promoting constructive partnership with all other agencies related to disaster management. This is very important. Basically, whenever there is a disaster, coordination, we have to coordinate between different departments, different agencies, different NGOs. Then and then only we can get positive results as far as the management of the disaster is concerned. Okay. Now, these are few of the objects which I have prepared for you. Now you can go through these objects. Then the second part will be discussed in the class. Okay. Okay, ji, thank you.